like a lot of people, I grew up with Winnie the Pooh, and I love Winnie the Pooh. So I thought we'd kind of look more into that history just a little bit, because I was curious. Unlike Winnie the Pooh, Winnie was actually a female, and the actual Winnie was a black bear who lived at the London Zoo from like 1915 to 1934, but was said to have originated in White River, Ontario, when Lieutenant Harry Colburn purchased it for $20 in 1914 while on his way to Valcartier, a Canadian Forces base. Colburn gave it the name after his hometown of Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Because White the Pooh doesn't have the same ring, does it?
No.
As the bear followed him all the way to England, where they would train her with, like, apples and honey. Eventually, though, he was deployed to France, so fearing the safety of their companion, they left Winnie with the London Zoo. And there's, like, tons of photos of them hanging out and him training the bear. And since he was a veterinary officer, he tended to supply line horses that would carry weapons to the soldiers at the front lines. This kept him busy treating the wounds along with the plagues of ammonia that circulated in World War I. He kept a pretty vivid diary, and you can check out quite a bit more of it on this website. But here's a small part of it, and
town is being shelled to pieces. Many men and horses killed. Shell bursts almost at my feet. Germans gas French soldiers who retreat en masse. Hundreds of civilians and soldiers streaming down road out of Ypres. Old men carrying their wives on their backs. Terrible scenes. Canadian soldiers hold on grimly against great odds. April 22nd, 1915.
While the war waged on, Winnie continued to grow, but didn't get angry like the zookeeper originally thought she would over time. He originally thought all bears got mean, but no, not Winnie. He later would say that she would recognize and greet her fans and rub up against them like a dog, or Troy, the most annoying cat in the world. The bear originally was to come home to Winnipeg after the war in 1918. He ended up leaving her there since she was so happy and loved by so many, which was also fortunate for the whole entire world, since that Winnie the Pooh, or Pooh Bear, is a creation by English Arthur A.A. Mill, or Arthur Milne, after witnessing his son Christopher Robin change the name of his teddy bear from Edward Bear to Winnie the Pooh.
Because White the Pooh doesn't have the same ring.
After so many visits to the London Zoo, Christopher Robin was so named this since his parents couldn't decide upon a name, so each parent chose a name. He went by this for like the first 5 or so years of his life, until everyone just started calling him Moon due to the mispronunciation of his surname Milne. Finally, he started calling himself Christopher when he got older, stating that the only name I feel to be really mine. He was gifted the alpha Farnell bear, who would become legend at only 1 year of age, and originally called him Edward Bear. And Milne had wrote a story about him in the newspaper in 1924, titled When We Were Young. Christopher was 5, was when his father bought Cotchford Farm for them to weekend at. Rich people. Christopher had been noted for writing in his autobiography.
So there we were, 1925, with a cottage, a little bit of a garden, a lot of jungle, 2 fields, a river, and then all the green, hilly countryside beyond, meadows and woods waiting to be explored. Gill's lap that inspired Galleon's lap, the group of pine trees on the other side of the main road that had became the 6 pine trees, and the bridge over at Posing Ford that became Pooh Sticks Bridge, and a nearby ancient walnut tree, which became Pooh's house.
The Winnie the Pooh character that would have then finally appeared by his actual name in 1925 on December 24th. In A Christmas Story for the Evening News in London.
So you'll be fighting in France tomorrow, huh? Well, good luck, Captain Colbert.
Oh, and you can be sure we'll take very good care of the bear. You are noting that it's the official mascot of the 2nd Canadian Infantry Brigade?
Yes, sir.
So long, Winnie. You be a good girl while I'm gone.
Why Winnie, sir?
From my hometown, Winnipeg.
Oh, Daddy, I just love Winnie. Couldn't we take him home with us?
Christopher Robin, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll write some stories about Winnie, and Mr. Shepherd here will draw some pictures.
Oh, Daddy, let's call him Winnie the Pooh.
Why Pooh, son?
I don't know, just Winnie the Pooh.
And that's how a young Canadian soldier's bear inspired 4 volumes of stories and verse that still sell millions of copies around the world.
He then wrote 4 stories with his first book coming out, simply titled Winnie the Pooh in 1926, that cemented him in history, along with Piglet, Eeyore, Kangaroo, and Aunt Tigger, who were all his toys at the time. And Owl and Rabbit were made up by A.A. Milne. The Gopher character later on was added by Disney. Even in his first appearance, he was noted for saying, "I wasn't in the book."
Somebody call for an excavation expert. I'm not in the book, but I'm at your service. Gophers. The name is MacLeod. What's your problem?
Yes.
Most of these toys are still on display at the New York Public Library, as he gave them away to the editor, stating he would hate to see Pooh commercialized and hated to dwell on the past, and that this was later in his life. In 1930, Stephen Sellinger purchased licensing and other trade rights for $1,000 up front and 66%, resulting in a deal worth $31 million just a year later. And that converts to basically all the money in 1931 at $500 million. Just ridiculous. He created the first Pooh doll, the first records, board games, radio broadcasts, animation, motion pictures, and films. He was even the one to give Pooh the iconic red shirt that we all know and love Pooh Bear for, and a little red shirt. And that first appeared in 1932 when he was on a RCA picture record, which is pretty cool. Meanwhile, Christopher Robin was raised by a nanny for most of his life.
As is, of course, the tradition.
As was the tradition at the time. And he eventually went to university until World War II broke out, and he tried to join, but he couldn't due to medical reasons. Thought that his dad pulled some strings for him to get him in, since his dad had been a captain in the First World War and in the Second World War as well. He got him a job as a sapper for the Royal Engineers, and this took him to the Middle East and Italy for over 5 years, or until he eventually got injured near a bridge that they were designing and building that had gotten bombed. Shards of shrapnel were even found in his head 50 years later by x-ray scans and stuff. It was also throughout this time where he and his father didn't get along as much. He wasn't happy with the recognition he garnered from his dad's portrayal of him. Flinched from me my good name and had left me with nothing but the empty fame of being his son. After the war, he married his cousin in 1948.
As is, of course, the tradition.
So was the tradition at the time. Einstein married his cousin too. And a couple years later, left London for Stoke Fleming to set up Harbour Bookshop that they ran for over 20 years. Which seems sort of strange to his mother, since he didn't really like the fact, he was in a book. And then he'd have to talk to people who loved the fact that he was in a book all the time. When people would ask him for an autograph, what he would do is he would take $10 and he would give that to charity. So that was pretty cool. It was shortly after this, though, that his father would undergo a stroke, and he would retire back to the farm until finally passing away at the age of 74 in 1956. That same year, they'd give birth to their daughter Claire, who was born with cerebral palsy, which later would lead him to sell his shares just to see she was always cared for. He would go on later to write his own autobiographies in 1974 called The Enchanted Places, which he said helped him come to terms with the cards he had been dealt in life.
Combined to lift me from under the shadow of my father and of Christopher Robin, and to my surprise and pleasure, I found myself standing beside them in the sunshine, able to look them both in the eye.
Like there's a lot of photos that you can tell really inspired it. Like the iconic one of him feeding Winnie honey. That was the thing about Winnie the Pooh. She was quite famous before Arthur even wrote about her, before even Christopher met her. The son of Colburn has been noted for saying that. Man.
Fred Colburn joins us now from his home in Winnipeg. Hi, Mr. Colburn.
Hi, Peter.
Who's your friend there?
Well, we've got a little bear cub that's been recognized throughout the world. The original one is, anyway.
Mr. Colburn, how do we know that this was the bear that inspired A.A. Milne?
Well, we know it because there was when the bear was taken to London. You see, the bear was a celebrity even before Milne came into the scene. The bear was known in the 11 years between 1914 and 1926 is when Milne started writing his Winnie the Pooh. The bear had been popularized because it was so tame and it was taking children from all over the world, where people would come to get on this, to take their children and put it on the children on the back of the bear, and he would take it around the zoo, and he did tricks as well that were quite fascinating to people at the time, and so it was a natural bear, and it was you just don't find bears. There was lots of American black bears, but not one like Winnie.
Because White the Pooh doesn't have the same ring.
It was in 1966 when both parties eventually licensed out to Disney, which gave us how most of us probably know Winnie the Pooh today. Like, I remember picking up a Winnie the Pooh book at the library as a kid, and I was like, what the heck is this thing? That's not Winnie the Pooh. Where's his red shirt? I was like, what? There's no red shirt. And eventually I did, grow up a bit and read it, and they are good books, but, to a kid, it's just not quite as good at the time, Disney didn't waste any time putting this license to work. They quickly created their first short, Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, in 1966, followed by several more shorts, Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, and Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2. I think that one's my favorite. They would later release this as a feature full-length film, which they did a lot with movies at the time, like The Three Calderones, and Make Mine Music, and Melody Time, and a bunch of others. It was a big thing for movie companies to do back then. Even Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes did it a lot. I mostly knew Winnie the Pooh from, the photo. There was also, I had the music box, but then there was also The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. That was probably the best part of that New Adventures show. It was the theme song. It was like the most catchy theme song ever. And once it came on, you just felt happy and you wanted to watch Winnie the Pooh, because you were going to have some fun.
Gotta get up, I gotta get going. I'm gonna see a friend of mine. He's round and he's fuzzy, I love him because he's just Pooh Bear, Winnie the Pooh Bear. Looking for fun, chasing some honey bees. Pooh Bear, I know he's out there. Rumbling, tumbling, climbing a honey tree.
Which would come on a lot of Saturday mornings. And this show was produced from only 88 to 91 and only had 50 episodes, but it ran on TV all the way up until 2011 for only 50 episodes to whoop whoop whoop. You gotta think about that. That's pretty awesome. It's even got a revival as of 2017 as Disney Juniors picked it up in a lot of European countries, but even Japan and South Korea, it's being shown in HD.
起きたら会いに行こう僕の友達大好きだよのんびりしてるプーさん熊のプーさん蜂蜜探してたら일어나라 아침에 떴다 친구 만나러 가자 바보같이 보여도 난 그가 좋아요. 곰돌이 푸 나의 친구 언제나 즐거운
Время пришло, в гости отправиться, ждет меня старинный друг. Он толстый и славный мой друг, самый главный он Мишка, плюшевый Мишка. Всем он знаком, кто угостит метком Мишка.
The show was really popular, winning 2 Emmys at the time. 89 also tied for one in 1990 for Outstanding Animated Program. And it tied with Beetlejuice, the cartoon. Oh man, that was a great show too. Had some amazing art in the movie. Beetlejuice game sucked though. And the cartoon had that really infectious episode that I've never forgotten to this day.
At the Spooky Boutique, shop till you freak.
At the Spooky Boutique, shop till you freak. At the Spooky Boutique, shop till you freak. At the Spooky Boutique, shop till you freak.
Okay,
At the Spooky Boutique.
Doing that another time. If we ever do it, maybe subscribe. Okay, that brings us back to 1991 when the Steven Seltzer Inc. filed a lawsuit against Disney over merchandising revenue, and they alleged that Disney had willingly used the classic interpretations of Pooh Bear. Because, like, if you look, there's like Winnie the Pooh, and there's like hyphens. Like, eventually the hyphens came out. Disney took over and it became like this other thing. And then, like, the original drawings, it was like a different Pooh, and like the Sellinger had like a different older Pooh, and then, you know, he put the red shirt on, right? We talked about that. Yeah, and then Winnie the Pooh is like really updated, and he's a lot more cutesy and stuff, right? They alleged that Disney had willingly used these in their merchandise, and they didn't pay. And the deal was that they were supposed to pay 2% of all earnings. And they also said that Disney failed to pay required royalties on all of the commercial exploitation of the name. The Disney Corp was actually sanctioned for this, for destroying 40 boxes of evidence during the proceeding. But later this was terminated when a judge found out that they had found out only because the investigator rummaged through Disney's garbage to find the evidence. Yeah, so that was eventually mitigated, and they did win Sellingers, which was pretty great for them. And Disney eventually did buy it just straight out pretty much from them. So Disney pretty much owns it all now. And I think this is why there was kind of a little gap in Pooh media for a while between that era. There wasn't very many Winnie the Pooh video games made, and there still hasn't been. The first Winnie the Pooh video game came out in 1984. Despite having Pooh in the name, was allegedly quite fun. I've never played it, but I did watch some Let's Plays. I don't know, it's kind of neat. It was on Amiga, Apple II, Atari ST, Commodore, the Commodore, and DOS. Another game for Pooh didn't come out until 1994, which was on the Sega Pico, which is something for Japanese kids. Like some computer thingy. I don't know. I've never seen one before. And apparently they sold really well. Like 3.4 million Picos sold. So it wouldn't be until like 1997 that North American audiences would see another Pooh game. And those were like Disney interactive ones. Edutainment games. Ready for math and reading with Pooh. So it was like, it took until 2000 and for it to actually be on PlayStation, and we finally got a more traditional two and a half dimensional platformer. It was actually rated fairly well at the time overall.
Winnie the Pooh is having a video game party on the PlayStation game console and Nintendo 64 game system. Play with all of Tigger's friends and help collect honeypots for Pooh. Learn new jumps, earn Tiggerific power-ups, enjoy 3 great minigames and the special storybook memory feature. Tigger's Honey Hunt is available this fall on PlayStation and Nintendo 64, product not yet rated. Also available, Winnie the Pooh's Adventures in the 100-Acre Wood for Game Boy Color, rated E for everyone, from New Kid Co. and Disney Interactive.
It was noted that the N64 version kind of sucked though, like most N64 versions sucked at the time since they didn't have the storage capacity of CD, so they couldn't have as much audio tracks. And it was a game that you want to hear Pooh Bear, Winnie the Pooh Bear, because it had like clips from the show and stuff. So, you know, that's stuff you don't want to miss out on. you know, everybody loves Pooh Bear, Winnie the Pooh.
Because White the Pooh doesn't have the same ring, does it?
No.
We're so adventurous, feast every now and again. And when we're alone and there's nobody home, it's nice to be able to count on a friend like Pooh Bear, Winnie the Pooh Bear. Wherever you go, oh, won't you take me please, Pooh Bear? I gotta be there. It's me and it's you, my silly old Winnie the Pooh.
It's even said that Winnie suffered from a lot of cavities, and her skull's on display, and you can see that like all of her teeth are missing, and that was because people overfed her honey. Bears normally don't eat honey; they like honey. What they actually attack hives for is the larvae. Honey is just kind of a little bit of bonus, but the larvae is like what really puts the fat on them. When you feed something sugar, inevitably you're just going to have gingivitis like any one of us, so brush your teeth, children. So yeah, thanks for watching this kind of strange delving into history. Thought we'd do this more often. So I got a lot more history stuff planned, and I've already got more scripts written even. Mostly got to film them and kind of do a little bit more back-checking, because I'm all about that. Bye, everybody.
Время пришло, в гости отправиться, ждет меня старинный друг. Он толстый и славный, мой друг, самый главный, он Мишка, плюшевый Мишка.
蜂蜜探してたらプーさん大変だ転げ落ちた木のほら穴に僕らいつも冒険して退屈しない 곰돌이 푸는 위험한 몸이 눈앞에 닥쳐도 두렵지가 않아 곰돌이 푸 어디를 가든 널 따라갈 테야 간다고 싶으면 어리석고 하기 싫지는 않고